Hi there, welcome back to 110 RC Scale Tales. We're back in the garage and it's another build video. And today we're talking about this, the Chevrolet K30 Tilt-back that you can see sat there. This was built by Stuart Pardue of RC Scaling Maker. I bought the model earlier in the summer, and a couple of weeks ago Stuart kindly agreed to come across and chat about the whole build, what it involved, what inspired him, where he sourced the parts. So without wasting any further time, roll VT. Cheers. Hi Stuart, welcome to 110 RC Scale Tales, and thanks for making the journey across from Edinburgh here into Fife. Hope you had a good journey.
It was a good journey, Mark. Thanks for having me over.
Excellent. So you are the man who created the wonderful, now it's a K10?
It's a Chevy K30, is what it's modelled as. So the reason behind the K is because it's four-wheel drive still, and for those that don't understand the Chevrolet brand, they used a C when it was two-wheel drive and a K when it was four-wheel drive. So as it's got front-wheel drive as well as rear-wheel drive, it's a K30.
K30, excellent. So I'm going to go right back. I started my love of RC way back in 1989 when I got my Tamiya Blackfoot. When did you start your interest in model making?
My RC interest goes as far back as 1993. So I was a teenager, it was my birthday, and I coaxed my mum and dad to take me to Wonderland Models, where I begged, grovelled, and almost had them steal a Tamiya, Tamiya Super Hornet. So that was my first meddling with RCs. After that, most of my RCs have been ready to run. They've had very little dabbling done. But over the years, I've started to kind of appreciate the kind of actual true model making side and what you can do with these models. My first foray into the off-road or the scale world was an Axial SCX10 Dingo. I think it was a Dingo. So that was my first crawler. And then after that, it just went exponential. The love for off-road vehicles with scale details followed hotly on the back of that. So I'd say before this truck here, my last 4 models have been a bit more kind of hand-built, scale orientated, as opposed to just something you can buy off the shelf.
Excellent. What gives you the inspiration, and where'd you go? What happens?
So I'm almost like a devil for my own abilities, because I see pictures on the internet, I look at pictures on Instagram. I'm basically driven by late 70s, early 80s Americana, especially pickup trucks. There's just something about them that kind of ticks all the boxes. But basically, my builds emanate from, I see a picture and I think, I'd like that in a 1/10 scale model, and then I set about trying to build it. Now, I won't be able to build it in true like fashion. There's just some things you can't detail down in 10 scale, but I will give it a concerted effort to go, let's give this a bash. And for the Chevy K30, that's how that came about. I literally saw a picture of a rollback. Now, this isn't a rollback, this is a tilt-back, but similar concepts for recovery trucks. And my mind said, I want that, and I will try and build it. So the best way to put it is, if Traxxas, Sen Racing, and RC four-wheel drive were to have a love child in the RC world, this would be it. Because it is literally the culmination of many various brands of RC built into one truck.
How long did this K30?
K30. So the K30 started as a vision basically July last year. So it's a 12-month affair, and affair is probably the best way to put it because I've spent so much time on it. But 12 months ago, I had the vision in my mind of an old Chevy pickup, a Chevy flatbed truck, and then it started from there. So it became a Sen Racing F450 ready-to-run truck. And the irony is I spent £280 on a ready-to-run truck, which I then proceeded to strip down to a bare chassis, sell all the bits that I don't need, and start with a chassis and a pair of axles. And then from there, it just became piecemeal parts of, right, I need some new drive shafts, I need some new axles, I need new suspension. So it literally is a ground-up build. Now, I'm no true fabricator. I'm not very good when it comes to metalwork and styrene work yet. So my mantra is to look at what parts are available through other companies and see if I can weld them together and make a truck. So it's almost like a Frankenstein build, using other people's parts to then make the final rendition.
Excellent. So looking at the truck, So we'll start from the ground up. So it's basically a Sen chassis.
Yep, it's a Sen F450 chassis. Now the good thing about that chassis is the actual chassis rails are 3-part rails, so you can shrink it, you can extend it as you see fit, and interestingly, the hole patterns on that chassis, when you stretch it out to its maximum hole length, gives you a perfect 20-inch wheelbase that by the time you put the bed on this plus the cab, you get the tilt part in the exact place you'd have it over the axle for touching the ground but not having too much height in the lift mechanism. And then equally from the front perspective, when you put the cab up against the flatbed or the headache rack, you get the perfect position for the front axle for your true wheelbase. So yeah, it was a Sen F450 from the ground, and then I've proceeded to add various parts to make the final build.
Excellent. And the cab is RC 4-wheel drive?
Yep, so that's an RC 4-wheel drive Chevy Blazer body. And again, for those that aren't familiar, the Blazer body is actually a smaller wheelbase truck that comes with a welded bed on the back and then a canopy to make it what is known as the Blazer truck. To make it into a cab only involved purchasing 3D printed parts from Shrink RC. So that basically caters for the cab back panel and gives you the rear window as well. So that's all been cut and shut. So the body's been cut, the cab back's been glued in, and then it's also been finished off for the paintwork. But that's what gives you the true cab only perspective of that body. You can't buy the body like that. It has to be fabricated using styrene or 3D printed parts.
So looking at the wheels, they're obviously not Sen F450.
No, they're not. So those wheels come from an American company called RC. They're a rather large company and they do a lot of aftermarket parts for various brands of RC models. The purpose behind the wheels were quite simple. If I'm doing a recovery truck, 9 times out of 10 a recovery truck will be a dually. So dually was the first and foremost part of it. The second part is, in order to make it as scale accurate as possible, in the Chevy world, from a K20 upwards would be 6 lugs. I think in fact it might actually be 8 lugs depending on what the final rendition is, but certainly for this kind of model it would have been a 6 lug bolt pattern, dualies on the back, singles on the front. They're period correct for the whole layout and the actual design, and then on top of that I've overlaid them with RC 4-wheel drive worn lockers on the front, and then on the back they're SST scale hubs, and again that just gives the final finish. So rather than seeing naked M4 bolts, you're actually getting some scale detail that would be visible on a real life truck.
Oh, they look absolutely amazing. What about the tyres? Where are the tyres from?
Tyres are RC 4-wheel drive 1.7 inch. They're called lowriders. So ironically, they're geared up for big rigs and semi-trucks. But because the Integy wheels are 1.7s, the RC 4-wheel drive 1.7 tyres fit nicely. They're not bead locked, they're just sitting on the rim. They can be glued. I've left them unglued. There's plenty of traction there when using it, but they give a nice low profile to allow articulation without getting caught up in the body or the bed. And again, they'd be very close to what you would have found back in the day on a 1/1 scale truck.
Excellent. So looking more at the detail on the truck, I'm looking at the die cut logos. Where did you source them from?
So the die cut logos are from Italy. I'm not going to pronounce the guy's surname, but his first name is Giuseppe. He has a dedicated page on Facebook where he will basically laser cut any emblem, logo, design that you can think of. So when it comes to doing custom designs, he's your go-to man. And obviously, if I was doing a K30, there was nothing available off the shelf, even from RC 4-wheel drive. The only emblems they do on the side is for the K5 Blazer. So they were handcrafted by Giuseppe himself to make a custom deluxe K30.
Excellent. And Auto Shop Jackson's Recovery.
So that's my gig. Behind the scenes, I do a lot of kind of decal work, vinyl work, sticker work. It kind of emanates from the fact that I was wanting some stuff for a lot of my builds in the past. No one could do it, so I thought I'll do it myself. Ironically, my wife has the cutting materials and tools to do the job, which I seem to have taken more control of than she has. So that is a kind of harebrained idea by myself. The actual logo itself, so the white vinyl parts are period correct to old vintage signs that you would have found back in the 70s. Late 70s, early 80s. I took that view and added in the textural detail. The purpose or reason behind Jackson's, to be quite frank, it's a Texas-based truck, which you'll see in the plates in due course. But with it being a Texas-named truck, I thought, well, what's the most Texas name I can think of? And Jackson's came to mind. I could have put other names in, but Jackson filled that void between the white just nicely. So it's a very mythical setup, but at the same time, it could actually be deemed as real.
No, looks good. Looks good. So there's the very nice scale plates. I believe these are made by Dimension RC.
They are by Dimension RC, yep.
And the Chevrolet badge on the grille, is that again Giuseppe in Italy?
So that came as part of the custom laser work from Giuseppe. So as well as the side badges, he gives a few extra ones. So there was a nice Chevy one that just fitted perfectly on the RC 4-wheel drive grille.
Now the lights I've fitted since receiving the model from you. They're actually RC 4-wheel drive lighting kit for the Chevy body, and I was really pleased that the lights actually were able to fit not just the cab but extend all the way back to the lights in the rear of the actual recovery truck. I'm going to move the camera up, and Stuart, if you want to open up the bonnet and talk about what you've done on the inside.
I'll just do this very gingerly. So there's not much detail on the inside. I've left a bit of kind of basically space for someone else to do any further detail if they feel they so wish to. But with the body being so low slung, I had trouble trying to find a scale engine that would fit inside the bay where I didn't need to put a cowl on the hood. So again, RC 4-wheel drive to the rescue with their V8 cover. Now I think this finds itself on Blazers and their Toyotas. What I've done is I've literally just attached it to the top of the Obi-Wing Fusion 2-in-1 motor. And to give it a wee bit pep, I've obviously painted it. The Chevrolet inscription is hand cut by myself using a vinyl plotter. And then for those that aren't aware, the small scale bolts don't actually come in the motor. So I bought a packet of M1.6 bolts, scale bolts, and threaded each one into the motor cover to actually give it just a little bit extra detail. It's maybe something you would see on the real deal, it's maybe not, but when you open the bonnet, hood, if we're talking Americanisms, it gives you that extra little bit of zing to the motor.
That looks really, really good. And looking down to the shock absorbers, are they the standard shocks that came with the Sen, or are they?
No. So with the Sen truck, they come with 90mm spring-loaded oil-filled shocks. I've opted for, and this is almost like endorsing a brand here, RC 4-wheel drive 50mm Bilstein internal spring shocks. So there's no oil, they're literally spring-loaded. They come with a set of soft, medium and hard springs, so you can actually fine-tune the springs to work how you so desire. And for the purposes of this truck, I gave it medium springs up front and I gave it heavy springs up back, with the intention that if it's going to carry loads, then the hard springs would do it a favour. There's less weight up front, so the medium springs would suffice. The other thing that's worth noting is, in conventional RC terms for off-roads or 4-wheel drives, the springs are normally attached to shock towers, which sit higher than the actual chassis itself. I opted to take the lesser size shocks at 50mm and actually bolt them straight to the chassis rails. So again, it all helps just drop the ride height of the truck and make it more akin to what you would have seen back in the late 70s, early 80s on the road.
It more realistic,
yeah. It also gives you space if you do want to put in inner fenders, any other details. You don't have to worry about deleting shock towers, they're already deleted. So
was that a hint that I've got stuff to do?
That was a massive hint that I want to see brake boosters, inner arches, I want to see the full works. I've left you some space to naturally just evolve yourself. Yes,
I will. It will get done, and you'll see the progress here on the channel. Okay, so on the roof, I've also, since getting the truck from yourself, Stuart, I've added these warning lights. These were bought on Amazon. The second set, the first set actually, when I tested them, actually went on fire. So thankfully they weren't attached to the truck when we tested it, because that would have been a disaster. But they actually look alright, they look quite nice low profile for the top of the truck. So Stuart, if you would be so kind to lift the cab off and tell everybody a bit more about underneath.
So
the truck doesn't actually, it's not attached to anything, it just sits.
No, it just sits. It's literally just, there's a couple of notches in the cab back panel which locate onto the chassis rails, and then up front there's a very tiny low-powered maggot that just drags it into place, so it sits perfectly straight relative to the bed and the chassis. But underneath, you can kind of start to see the beginnings of the kind of mechanical side of things. So it's got a SSD aluminium scale transmission, so that allows the motor to go up front. It's what allows an interior to be built in, and again, it's more scale looking than some of your 3-gear transmissions that you see in a lot of 4-wheel drive or rock crawler RCs. So that's the kind of the main drive for it. I've done a little bit of styrene work to create a kind of faux pas floor pan, and then on top of that there's a 3D printed bench seat. There's even a little edition of a recovery scale magazine just for greater effect. But that's pretty much what's attached to the chassis. Now it's hard to see underneath the body, but within the body itself it's got 3D printed door cards, and the dash is actually it's a GRC dash, and it's made for the 1979 Traxxas Blazer. But with a bit of chopping, a bit of grinding and some Dremel work, it's actually a near damn perfect fit for the RC 4-wheel drive Blazer body as well. So that's just in there for, again, for cosmetic effect. It looks like the real deal. When you look through the window, you get this impression that what you see in there is what you'd see in real life on a full-scale truck.
Excellent. All right. Now let's talk about the business end. So clearly the back has been donated from the recently released Traxxas TRX6 hauler.
Yep.
But it looks really, really good on the back of this. But I think one of the failings of the Traxxas TRX6 hauler was it does not tilt.
No.
But you've overcome this on this model.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what you'll see on the internet is a lot of people are applying the same principle to the actual Traxxas hauler itself. So they're making it a non-fixed bed. My problem with that is, whilst that is innovative and it looks great that you can actually have a functioning bed, the Traxxas hauler is not a scale model that you would have seen on the road. So my go-to was, how can I make that bed both functional and scale in appearance? So I've managed to overcome that with, I dare say, a lot of, again, cutting, dremeling and blood, sweat and tears to make it work.
Okay, Stuart, if you could do the honours and show everybody the flatbed tilting.
So the money shot, here's the bed in operation. So hopefully what you can see from here is, to get the bed to operate, there's two main things happen. The first thing is the installation of 2 linear actuators that allow the bed to push and pull. In order to get that function to work in the first place though, the actual bed is attached to the chassis using a set of sleeve bearings, and that allows the actual roll motion for the actuators to leverage against. The actuators themselves are very similar to servos, so where a servo would make an operation that goes round and round, either clockwise or anti-clockwise, actuators do a push-pull mechanism. These specific actuators are actually 3-wire models, so as opposed to just having an on-off position, the 3 wires enables you to actually treat it like a normal servo, so you can create endpoint adjustments, you can change the trimming of them, and the purpose for doing that on this truck is there's no set of actuators would work on this bed to get it to exactly how you want it. So by having ones that can be programmed, I've actually used the actual transmitter to program the endpoints to say that when the bed touches the ground, it stops. And then when you're ready to lower the bed, it's just a simple flick of the switch on the transmitter. The bed will lower itself, and when it finishes its journey, it will automatically stop itself. So there's no further intervention. It does it all by itself at the flick of a switch.
Very, very cool. Excellent. So what's caught my attention also, apart from the amazing tilting flatbed, is the fuel can and the storage boxes at the bottom of the vehicle. What we'll do is we'll turn the vehicle around and we'll talk about more about them. Yeah?
Yep, sounds good.
So what you've done, Stuart, you've actually pulled together a lot of scale and detail in the truck, which enhances the model considerably.
Yeah.
And one thing I do like is like this, the fuel tank here on the side. Where did you source these bits and pieces from? So
the fuel tank, that was another eBay find. So there is a company out there that does Soviet-based RC trucks, and that's King Kong RC. So the tank is from, I think it's from one of their Soviet 6x6 trucks. It comes as black injection molded ABS. I've taken the time to prime it and paint it in a kind of flat aluminium finish, put a bit of detail paintwork for the actual filler cap, and then I don't think the camera will be able to pick it up, but there is some very intricate warning water slide decals just to give it that extra little bit of scale detail. Yeah. So yeah, that was the purpose behind that, because a flatbed would have a fuel tank. It would normally be sitting underneath the flatbed. It fitted the space perfectly. It was a no-brainer.
And next, of course, we've got a very nice storage box, which drops down to reveal the gubbins,
yep,
the receiver,
yep,
and other bits and pieces in a bag there. I think it's the adapter.
That's your adapters for your lockers.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll definitely need them at some point. The lockers themselves, so these are custom made. There is a company down in England called KK Truck Store. Again, they cater for the 1/14th scale big rig semi market, but when you're starting to play with the differences in 1/14th and 1/10th scale, the differences are not that great. The lockers that they make by default are actually 50mm deep, so I made a custom request to the owner of KK Truck Store to say, can I get your lockers handmade but with a 40mm depth, because 50 would be too close to the ground, you're going to start to scratch them when you're driving it. He duly obliged, so I have the only set of lockers which are 40mm deep. So there's one on this side which holds the receiver for the electronics, and then on the other side there's a slightly wider one, and that currently stores the 2S 7.4 LiPo. So yep, here we go. This is the right hand side of the custom KK Truck Store lockers. As you can see, the slight difference from the other side is it's twice the width, and inside it's got enough space to house a LiPo. I've chosen a simple 2200 milliamp LiPo because it was quite small for the purposes of testing and building the truck. But as you can see, there's enough space in there that you could probably squeeze a slightly bigger one in to suit your needs.
Yeah, and it works really well with the retaining magnet.
It does. It works perfectly well. It makes it all accessible, but it keeps the electronics away from the cab and away from under the hood if you are trying to score the scale details.
And very much in keeping with a US hauler.
Correct,
They like the shiny chrome.
Yeah, they love their chrome, they love their lockers. Everything in America is big and brash. I had to follow suit and make it big and brash.
And it certainly is. So I'm moving to the back of the truck, so
Yep.
you can get the full scale of how big this thing is. It's about a metre long, isn't it?
It's just shy of a metre. I think when I measured it, it was coming in at 950 mils.
Excellent. So there we've got the other scale number plate. But what I'm more interested in is the fantastic mud flaps.
Yep.
Now, did you source these, or?
So they're not sourced, they're actually handcrafted by myself. So to start with, I acquired some 1mm thick sheet rubber, and then from there that was all hand cut on a vinyl plotter. So a vinyl plotter is actually quite a versatile tool when you're dealing with very thin material. So it cut the rubber mud flaps just nicely. The Chevy logos, again, this is something that's kind of bold and brash that you'd find in America. I cut that by hand on the plotter just to give the mud flaps that little bit of extra detail. To get them to actually mount to the body, well, in actual fact they're mounted to the flatbed. Believe it or not, I use some hardware that comes with the Tamiya King Hauler and Night Hauler, just to make it attached to the flatbed. So again, when the flatbed tilts, the mud flaps move ever so slightly with the flatbed, which would be in keeping with how they would operate in the real world.
Excellent. Fantastic. So I think everybody watching this can agree with me that the truck looks absolutely amazing. I'm going to finish the video off once I finish speaking to Stuart, and you'll see the truck out actually running, and we'll maybe get something on the back of it doing its job. So there you go, there's the K30. Well, there is the Chevy K30 flatbed hauler, looking amazing there. What a fantastic model. Very pleased to be the owner of the said model, and also very pleased that Stuart has taken time come across from Edinburgh to share the build process with you guys out there in YouTube land. And so thanks again for coming across.
You're welcome, Mark. Thank you.
And thanks again for selling the model to me. Yep, it's mine. Nobody else will get one. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Please comment, good or bad, I will reply. Any questions about the model, anything I can't answer, I will put to Stuart, and I'm sure he'll come back with the answer that you're looking for. All the parts used in the model, I'm going to put links in the description below, and I'll also put a link to Stuart's Facebook page if you're interested in his models past and models future. So it leaves me to say thanks again for watching 110 RC Scale Tales. Keep on trailing, keep on crawling, and we'll see you on the next video. All the best now. Cheers now. Bye bye.
Bye bye.